Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Happy vacation.
Yeah.
We're vacationing right now.
Right in the middle of it. What are you doing right now?
I don't know. When does this show go live? June 30th. I'm on my, believe it or not, Pete, right now, this second that this show is getting put out there, I am driving to Monument Valley, where I'm going to spend several days. I'm going to hunt for pony prizes, because we have talked about several films the past year that have actually shot up in Monument Valley.
Yes, we have.
we're going to be trying to avoid the heat as much as possible. But yeah, that's kind of the initial.
Isn't Monument Valley actually hotter than where you live?
It's a higher elevation, so it's not hotter. It's actually cooler. But cooler than 120 isn't going to be that much cooler.
No, that's awful.
It'll only be 110.
Oh, God.
So see, I'm getting out of the heat.
That's. Well, let's see. What am I doing as this goes live? I am. Let's see. It'll be 6 a.m. 9 a.m. I will be. I'll likely be sitting on a porch under some trees with coffee and a newspaper, and I will be watching passersby as they cross the street. It will be a very sort of Lake Wobegon kind of an experience. That's what I'll be doing actively at that point.
And considering your comments, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, about dead tree books. Are you looking at an actual newspaper?
No,
is this a
iPad.
Kindle newspaper?
It's on my
Okay,
iPad.
or an iPad newspaper.
Yeah,
right.
no, they actually have taken to republish. This is a little community where I will be, and they actually republish the entire newspaper on like Tumblr or something. I mean, it's like I read the whole thing on Tumblr while I'm there. It's very funny.
Nice.
No, but you're right. I need to use words because they already have meanings, and newspaper is not the right one. I will be reading the news from Lake Chautauqua.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's better.
On Tumblr.
Got to watch these phrases that we have.
I do. Words matter, like newspaper. All the bacteria, the viruses.
Diseases you can catch
It's
from
just
it.
awful, Andy. It's chronic. I don't have any news. Let's tell the people where we're from.
Where are we from?
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there's Andy Nelson.
Hey!
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the second in our 2016 Vacation Challenge with Stanley Kubrick's 1964 end-of-the-world satire, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app or join us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. We got a little bit of, we don't have any follow-up because of our vacation.
Yeah, there's no Guess the Movies right now. I think Games Master Steven Smart's going to give us fill us in on all the weeks we've missed when we all get back.
That is true, and we're a little bit behind on the Blotspot too. But we will catch all those up when we're back in the saddle. However, we did get a fantastic email.
Oh, yes.
Would you like to share the email, Andy?
We got a great email from Andre Leonachescu. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I hope so.
Sounds great to me.
It
to my
sounds-
ear,
it sounds
it's
good.
perfect.
If I said it wrong, I know he's like, that's how I want to say it. That's how.
You're the worst.
No, it was a really great email about the movie Force Majeure, which we had actually as a listener's choice. Was it last year?
Yes, it was, sir.
Yes, it was early last year. And just kind of talking about that and some of the thoughts that he had as he watched it, kind of comparing and contrasting with some of the thoughts that we had. A lot of great points that you brought up in your email, Andre. I think there's a lot of interesting things to think about with that film, and I definitely like the way you're kind of depicting the final scene as kind of the hilarious caricature of the rest of the film, where it's not necessarily a chance for them to kind of switch roles, so to speak. And I think it's pretty interesting. I actually am kind of curious to watch that film again and kind of look at it that way and see. But yes, I think that you may be right. The inevitable divorce may be happening shortly after this family arrives back home.
Did you ever watch that movie twice? Or did you just watch it before the thing and then, have you seen it multiple times since?
No, I've seen it just the once.
Yeah, me too. This actually is prompting me to watch it again and see. Because you're right. I mean, my hindsight now, gifted by his reminder, is subtly changing my opinion on the film. I definitely need to pull this one back out.
Yeah, also, and just like how he comments about how detached the camera is in points like when Tomas is crying hysterically. And,
right.
Ebba is completely unemotional about it. Just some interesting little filmmaking techniques like that go into that film. Definitely something that might be worth a look again.
I agree. But before that, Andy, let's do trailers.
So my trailer is for a film called Anthropoid, which I clicked on thinking, oh, this should be an interesting little sci-fi film. Boy, was I wrong.
You dummy.
I am a dummy. But, I had never heard of this. This is actually based on the extraordinary true story of Operation Anthropoid. Why they named it that, I hope they answer the film, because it's the strangest name. This was a World War II mission to assassinate SS General Reinhard Heydrich, the main architect behind the final solution and the Reich's third in command after Hitler and Himmler. I had never heard of this true story, and I was kind of really intrigued by it. And I don't know if it's just because we've been talking about so many World War II films in the last month or two, but this just really piqued my curiosity. I got really excited about the whole idea. I love kind of spy movies when they have to go after something, especially when it's a big thing like this. And I love seeing Cillian Murphy. I think that he's just a fascinating actor to watch. So this really got me excited. This is a film directed by Sean Ellis, written by Ellis along with Anthony Fruin. Sean Ellis, I don't really think... Actually, I take it back. I saw Sean Ellis's short film Cashback, which was, I believe, an Oscar-nominated short film, or perhaps it was like the Indie Awards. I cannot remember, but I know I saw his short. I know he made a feature of it. I heard it was not as good as the short. I did enjoy the short quite a bit. And then I know that he has done other things since then, like The Broken, which I just remember the poster, and that's all. But he's one of those directors who has kind of created a career for himself out of doing some shorts, and got some acclaim. And now here he is with this really interesting true story based on this World War II thing that I want to see. Like I said, Cillian Murphy's in it, and Toby Jones, along with a bunch of other people I'm not familiar with. Jamie Dornan, Harry Lloyd, Charlotte Le Bon, Bill Milner, more and more and more. So, I'm curious about this one. What do you think?
Well, Cillian Murphy, absolutely, I'm into Cillian Murphy. I think he is fantastic. And actually, I don't know. Interestingly, Jamie Dornan, I'm curious about him.
To see if he can do something other than 50 Shades?
Yes, yeah, that is exactly it. Because it feels like he should be able to do that. It really does, and so I'm absolutely looking forward to checking this out. It looks like a really compelling story. You're right. I am absolutely resonating with this film, and I think it is because of all these World War II stories, and amusingly that we would come back to World War II connections with the movie we're talking about today. I think I can't shake it. So, bring it on. I'm in. When's it come out?
Yeah, it looks very interesting. This one is going to be released August 12th here in the U.S. And I have a feeling it's not going to be a big release. No other release dates yet, other than the Czech Republic, when it will be playing July 1st at the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival. So I'm curious to see how this one does. I have a feeling it will be a small release, but definitely something I want to see.
My trailer, Andy, is Outlaws and Angels. This is a Western drama thriller that played at Sundance, and I think it met pretty good reviews there. I haven't seen bad ones yet, but I haven't looked all that hard. What I can tell you is currently on IMDb, it's a 7.4. I watched the first, 45 seconds of the trailer, and I thought, J.T. Molnar writer direct. I don't know much from J.T. Molnar. He's in a bunch of shorts. This is his first big feature, as far as I can tell. Stars Chad Michael Murray from, One Tree Hill, and let's see, he's done some other stuff I think that is more interesting. He's actually most recently on Agent Carter. He plays Jack Thompson on Agent Carter, if his name doesn't immediately ring a bell. But Terry Polo and Luke Wilson is in this film. And so, I was just kind of middling until Francesca Eastwood comes up, right? And I don't know much from her, apart from her,
Or parentage.
Family, yeah. I know she was in, she's had bit parts in things like Jersey Boys and she was in Twin Peaks, the TV series that's coming back out in 2017. So she's got a bunch of credits, but then I saw you see her in this movie, and she does the old Stockholm Syndrome turnabout and falls in love with the bad Western guys who are raiding her family's house. And man, she goes dark fast, and I was in it. I was totally in it once I saw that. Then the whole trailer took a completely new tone, and I was suddenly stoked to see this movie. Did it have the same effect on you?
It did not.
Oh no.
No, it looked pretty bad from the beginning, and her character changed for me, at least the way it was depicted in the trailer. I totally just was rolling my eyes at. And I was
Were
like,
you really?
Oh,
no.
Cheesy, so cheesy. It just looks so terrible. So I wasn't convinced by this trailer. Maybe the movie will do better than the trailer did for me. I mean, it is at a 7.4. But yeah, as it stood when I watched it, I didn't buy into it.
Well, I hope it changes your mind. I hope it changes my mind, because I am with you. Like if this is the only anchor that I have, then I'm a little bit worried about it. But I am looking forward to seeing Francesca Eastwood in this film. No wide release dates. I see limited July 16th this summer. So check your local listings, probably New York and LA. And we'll see. It did play in Sundance in January, so it doesn't seem like there's been a huge scramble to get this picked up in wide release. I don't know.
Yeah,
which is worrying. But I thought it looked cool. Andy's definitely a thumbs down. What are you gonna do? I don't know, Andy. You're gonna have to answer to the Coca-Cola Company.
Blast off! Where's my shorts?
Where's the bathroom?
Buck, should I get it?
On the hotline.
Dr. Strangelove.
Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and
Love the bomb. A moving picture.
Dr. Strangelove, Andrew. How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. This is Stanley Kubrick from 1964. And this was your pick for our vacation challenge. Why was that?
You tasked me with finding something that, or actually particularly picking my favorite end-of-the-world dystopian future post-apocalyptic comedy.
This is a little cheat.
It is, but it is about the end of the world.
It's you would classify this maybe as a pre-apocalyptic.
Yeah, but
it is comedy.
But if you're calling it an end of the world comedy, I mean, it is a comedy about the end of the world. I think it fits. It's not. This is about it's a comedy about how the world ends, I guess.
It's a process piece. Well, I think it absolutely fits. And tell me, give me your initial feedback here. How did this hit for you?
This was a film that my second year film production teacher showed us in film class. Because every now and then they do that when you're in production. They'll stop class and just watch something, and that was kind of fun. And this was one of those movies where I don't think anybody in the class really got it. But my professor was just sitting in the back, just snickering through the whole thing. And and it's one of those movies that I watched. I was like, well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it was kind of funny. It was weird the way it ended. Like I didn't click with it at first.
How long did it take to click for you? Like, and I mean on the scale of years.
It really wasn't that many. I think that within the next couple of years of film school, my senior thesis project was on Kubrick. I had really kind of gone back and studied every one of his films for that particular project. And I think in the process of all of that, I started kind of getting it. And plus, when you're hanging out with film students, you're always trying to be erudite and talking about really hoity-toity things in film. And I know that there was somebody that I was talking with who I worked with, who was into film, and this, he would always say, "Oh, you've got to rewatch this and look at this and check this out and watch this." And so I rented it and watched it again. And I think it took a few times for me to really click with the comedy in this film before I really was getting it and before I was finding so much of the humor in it. And now, it was pretty short after that where it was something that I really enjoyed. Now I watch it again, and I just honestly, I feel like my film professor now, just like snickering in the back of the room.
Yeah.
Because I can't stop laughing when I watch this. It's like every single thing is so funny. And I just feel that in the process of trying to make a film about his own personal fears of kind of nuclear holocaust and the state of the world at the time, I think Kubrick really found the right way to tell the story. And his decision to go satire rather than serious, I think ended up allowing him to make something that poked fun at it in a way that I think made it more impactful. And so, now I just watch this film and I think it's so funny and so biting. And I think what's interesting is to kind of reflect on this film and think and put it in context of the time when it came out in early '64, when the Cold War was not something people laughed at. It was a very serious thing. And the fact that this movie was out there that was just like, it was this comedic joke about what nuclear holocaust was. I think that it was just so brave and so ahead of his time to actually make something like this. It's like somebody now making a film about, and I really mean no disrespect, but making a satire on like the state of the U.S. and its policies on gun control. It's that sort of thing where it would be really, I think there would be a lot of eyes raised about if somebody did something like that.
Well, it's like Fritz Lang and making, Manhunt in 1940s. You know what I I mean? It is a very similar thing. Dealing with very high energy contemporary issues, cultural issues. And doing with it, and what I find so interesting about this, I didn't know that it was originally intended to be a serious film. I didn't know that Kubrick had become absolutely obsessed with nuclear armament and had been digesting these books about the darkest trouble that comes with nuclear weaponry. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know that the original film was titled The Delicate Balance of Terror, which I wouldn't have wanted to see.
That sounds terrible.
It sounds just awful. But I heard this a quote from one of his contemporaries who was working with him on the film, and said, we kept going back and forth saying, if you find out that the bomb has been dropped and you're in an office, the film's a documentary. If you find out the bomb's been dropped and you're in a living room, then it's a drama. But if you find out that the bomb's been dropped and you're in a bathroom, it's a comedy. And they went with that. And I think that was an absolutely brilliant choice, and it was just perfect. I haven't seen the movie in years and years and years, and I think I had made the turn that it was funny by the time I'd last seen it. I remember it as a funny movie. I don't remember it as this funny. I don't remember Peter Sellers, straight man president, as being as absolutely drop dead funny as he was. In this film, I didn't remember the George C. Scott being as insanely funny as he was in this film. So much of it just had me rolling. It was a great pick, and yes, the world ends, thus you win.
And it's just it's one of those movies that you keep picking up on things as you watch it over and over again. And I read Roger Ebert's review before I watched it, again, in his great movies series of reviews. And he really kind of fixated on George C. Scott's face. And so I ended up fixating on George C. Scott's face as I watched it. And he is not wrong in any way at all. George C. Scott was like what he is doing and how he reacts and every little thing that he's doing with his face is just so flippin' funny. Just every little move. And I know that he was trying to do a little more serious, and the way that I heard it is that he would do a couple serious takes, and then Kubrick would say, okay, now do one really over the top. Just let's play around with it. And Kubrick ended up using all the takes that were really over the top, and I guess that I don't think that Scott was necessarily thrilled that he made him look so buffoonish. But in context of the film, I think that's exactly what the film needed.
I totally agree. And I think that, I like to think that George C. Scott has some hindsight that the way he portrayed the character quite naturally as a child, essentially, as a stubborn, stewing, spoiled child, I think ends up making the film that much better. I was disappointed to learn that he was frustrated with Kubrick, but I also know that Kubrick's a tough guy to work with. Yeah,
and as is Scott, and Kubrick had to really kind of, in order to kind of gain Scott's respect as they began this process, had to figure out a way to kind of get that respect from Scott, and so he pulled out his chessboard. Anybody who knows anything about Kubrick, he was a master chessman. I mean, he just always was playing chess. And so he and Scott were always playing chess when they had time to do so. It kind of had a board set up. And Kubrick won almost every single time. And so that actually kind of helped Scott kind of gain his respect and start kind of, really tuning in to what Kubrick was saying and wanting him to do.
As the Kubrick historian here, apparently, do you want to walk people through, who, for those who haven't seen the film in some time, the general stream of events that make this film what it is?
Yeah, sure. General Jack D. Ripper, fantastically played by Sterling Hayden. He sends out a code, which is the code for Plan R, to his all of his Air Force planes that are flying. They're all in the safe zone, just 2 hours outside their strike zones in Russia. He sends this code out, which basically says, "Hey, the U.S. has been attacked. Drop your bombs, and let's get World War III started." And so we focus on one plane headed up by Kong, and Kong, who is played by Slim Pickens, Major Kong, he takes his plane and heads to do exactly what he's told. Meanwhile, the president and all of his people find out that this plan has been taken by Ripper, and so they, one, try to stop Ripper, and two, try to stop these planes. And I guess you could just say hilarity ensues on all ends, and because of things that happen in the plane, this particular plane ends up not getting called back, and in the end, starting World War III.
The film is, if you can't tell, it's very much Cold War satire. It is funny and dark, really grim. It is all about sex. This movie, it is all about the sex. It connects war and sex in ways that very few films can do successfully. From just the giant guns, the way the way Sterling Hayden holds his giant gun, to the aerial refueling scenes of this B-52, and the music that is played, the absolute sex symphony that is played when the planes are flying and refueling, to Sterling Hayden's whole mentality, or his whole mission, is to stop the Russians from fluoridating our water to poison our precious bodily fluids over and over with the precious bodily fluids. All of these things end up connecting war and sex and ego and id in ways that just make for a really funny experience.
Not to mention that there is essentially the doomsday device is triggered by what you could call a nuclear orgasm.
Yeah. Yes. Slim Pickens riding it all the way, as they say. It's a fascinating thing, and this film was so impactful. It was so powerful, in fact, in the cultural gestalt of the time, that when Reagan was elected, he asked to see the War Room. Sure that the War Room existed because he saw it in Dr. Strangelove. In fact, it did not.
It is just brilliant. Yeah, it's Stanley Kubrick wrote this. He bought the rights for the book based. It was Peter George's book, who actually wrote it under the pseudonym Peter Bryant. Kubrick read it and bought the rights to the book. He thought that Terry Southern, who had just written a book called Candy, would be a perfect person to bring on board. Because that film, I guess, I didn't look it up at all to get any research on it, but my understanding is it was rather kind of, I guess it was kind of a Lolita type of book for the time. And so Kubrick thought that would be a perfect person to bring on to kind of help write this. So between the two of them, along with Peter George, they kind of wrote this script. And, I think that Kubrick had said something like, what's the most outrageous thing a person can say while still seeming credible? And that was kind of the motivation that they had once they decided to go with the satire route. Everything from just the scope of these different parts of the story as they all kind of work together to try to stop this bomb or try to keep it happening like Ripper is doing. Also, there's these little moments like the reveal that when Turgison gets the phone call and he has his secretary, Miss Scott, in kind of sitting there in bed and they're chatting. And I don't know, it's just there's something really funny about the fact that they're having this conversation. And then they reveal later that it's 3 a.m. and they're just like wide awake. And it just seems like it's, 5 p.m. It's just it's really interesting. It's just a small little thing, but it's just like, I don't know why I found it so interesting that was like, it was a 3 a.m. phone call. And here they are just kind of doing their thing. Like, what did they just finish in this room,
Well, once again, I think we know what they just finished.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it is. It's really beautiful, and the level of just sort of production sarcasm that the military slogan is "Peace is our profession" is on these signs everywhere. Right. Ends up being just again really sadistically delightful reveals. Kubrick is a director. How do you think this film represents his work? But frankly, I don't know that I've laughed at many other Kubrick films.
I don't know if he's really tried to make many other films that you laugh at. I mean, there might be some moments in like Full Metal Jacket in the training where, there are some funny elements, but yeah, I mean, he's kind of done a bunch of genres, the heist film, the horror, the war, the space opera, I don't think he's done much more in the way of comedy. I wish kind of that he did, because I think that this is just almost a perfect comedy. It's so funny. But you definitely do see stuff of Kubrick in here. His crash zooms that he's always kind of loved, even all the way up through Eyes Wide Shut. He still was using those. And, most people considered zooms out of fashion, but somehow Kubrick did it in a way that still seemed like it fit. I didn't see any, starting with kind of 2001, he really got that idea where he would center something in the shot and it would be kind of your center of focus. And it was like perfectly framed in a way that it was just, everything about it was just a mirror of itself. It was beautiful frames. He doesn't do that so much here or kind of in his earlier films that I recall. Although I think you could say that maybe in the war room, like the wide shots when you're kind of looking over the table, that might be it. But yeah, I mean, there definitely are moments that feel very Kubrickian here. And obviously, I mean, I think that his just kind of dark take on the world, I think, comes across pretty nicely.
What's the most Kubrickian about this whole experience is the trailer of this film, which is absolutely out of character from the experience of watching the film. I find that a riot. Have you watched the trailer recently?
I haven't watched it recently, but I know that he had Pablo Ferro do the trailers and all the TV spots, and Pablo Ferro did the title design, and it has that very much that same feel. I saw clips of it, and there's something about that style that I think it really makes it stand out. I'd love to see somebody do a trailer like that nowadays.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a terrible trailer. Well, by the time we're talking about this, the trailer will have already played, or at least a part of it, on this very show. And it's a terrible trailer for podcasts because it actually intercuts very fast cuts of sequences from the film with titles that they're like posing questions. What would happen if the bomb dropped? And then it cuts to just like a one-word response from somebody in the cast, like the president saying, "Oh," right? Something like that. And so it feels really just sort of staccato, very Kubrickian to me. I mean, it really is kind of emotionally engaging and kind of frightening, and not very funny. Overall, it's more sort of sensorily offensive, but a pretty powerful trailer experience.
You almost want to watch it rather than just listen to it.
Yeah, you really do. So hit the link and go actually watch it, because it doesn't do justice to how cool it was cut together. First shot, last shot.
The first shot of this film is just really kind of a cloudy fog shrouding the black mountaintops of Zokov Islands in the below the Arctic peaks of the Zokov Islands, where, as we learn from the voiceover that accompanies it, this is where the Russians have built their doomsday device. So we get this great first shot of just kind of this, an aerial shot as we look at this, the mountaintops surrounded by fog. And then, of course, the last shot is really just, a whole series of nuclear explosions as the world is destroyed. I think it sets up kind of the doomsday device pretty effectively. And I think what's nice about that first shot is it's so not connected. It feels so disconnected to the world. It's just it's clouds and a mountaintop poking out. So you really don't ever feel like it, I don't know. I guess it just kind of ends up creating this disconnected mystery of it.
Yeah, I think so, and it's it ends up being just a really kind of beautiful sandwich of doom, and done in such a way that sort of celebrates the journey that you go on through this film. That it starts in kind of the shrouding black mountains, but it's sort of natural, and then it ends with all of these things just being destroyed. I think it's a fancy way to say you're done for.
It ends with doomsday, and it's interesting because we don't learn about the doomsday device till midway through in the context of the film. It's only because it's been set up for us at the beginning. So in a sense, we're kind of like ahead of all these Americans. We know that it exists before they do.
The one thing I found really amusing is that the last shot could have been this massive cream pie fight in the war room. And I wouldn't have believed it had you just told me that, had I not seen stills of them shooting this sequence. A giant cream pie fight. And that ended up being cut because the cast was laughing too hard. That's the word I understand. And that it was just too straight up funny.
I think that Kubrick intended on it essentially being kind of a mini nuclear Armageddon.
Right, a metaphor for what's going on outside.
Exactly. But unfortunately, the actors couldn't stop laughing. Kubrick's whole design with this was that nobody would be laughing. They would all be doing it 100% seriously, as if they're really fighting a war with these pies. Unfortunately, everybody just laughing too much because they're getting pie in the face.
Right. Bridge too far on the the straight man trope.
Yes.
We didn't mention the disclaimer at the beginning of the film.
Right.
Which I think is also, I don't know, for me, it sets up the comedy, which is, I don't know if it was serious, right? The disclaimer says something to the effect of, it's the stated position of the Air Force that their safeguards would prevent the occurrence of such events as they're depicted in this film. Is that roughly it?
It says, it is the stated position of the U.S. Air Force that their safeguards would prevent the occurrence of such events as are depicted in this film. Furthermore, it should be noted that none of the characters portrayed in the film are meant to represent any real persons, living or dead. It made me wonder when I saw that, because we have that, I mean, not quite the first part, but certainly the last part at the end of films now.
Yes.
I haven't done any research on like when it started, but watching this at the beginning of the film made me wonder if this kind of kicked that off.
It's, it really is. It comes off to me once you see the film, like they can't be serious.
Well, I mean, the Air Force said, there is no way that this could ever happen. We have too many things in place that would never allow this to actually be the case. Now we know that is not true. We know, and I guess this kind of goes to that whole Plan R. There really were things like this that could have gone drastically wrong and really ended up just like this film ends. Luckily, it never actually happened. But yeah, they had these things set up where, if the president isn't around, or they can't reach him, that somebody else can start the war, set the bombs off, and all that sort of stuff. They had all these things out there. At the time, nobody was saying it, but now we know that, and so it puts it in a different context now, because now we know the Air Force was lying about saying that.
Gallows humor.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's very dark.
Peter Sellers is noted in this film because he's once again playing multiple characters. That's kind of his shtick by now.
Well, and certainly, I mean, he had just done it with Kubrick right before this, with Lolita,
right,
where he did play Quilty. He plays Quilty, but Quilty it's almost like Quilty disguises himself as other people. Or not as other people, but there are points where you have Peter Sellers in the film, but you're not supposed to realize that it's Claire Quilty. Mm-hmm. At least Humbert doesn't realize that it's Claire Quilty.
Right. So he comes back to work with Kubrick again in this film, playing what was originally targeted to be 4 characters. He ended up playing 3: President Merkin Muffley, Group Captain Lionel Mandrake, and Dr. Strangelove. What is the significance, before we look at each of these characters? President of the United States, President Merkin Muffley. Group Captain Lionel Mandrake, he's the XO of
well, he's the RAF officer. He's like it's on like an exchange
He's
program.
like the liaison, right. He works with
Ripper.
And Dr. Strangelove is we believe the Operation Paperclip recruit, the former Nazi who was recruited by the OSS after the war for his scientific expertise to work for the U.S. military.
Yeah, I don't know if there's significance in what they chose for him, other than those were some pretty great roles, pretty good opportunities for Sellers to kind of lend his comedic stylings. He was also supposed to play Major Kong, and that didn't work out. He was, what I heard is that he had a hard time getting the Southern accent, and he kind of felt like he was already in it too much. And then he and Kubrick were in a fight, and he was on the B-52 set and fell off and broke his leg. And which is kind of why Strangelove ended up in a wheelchair, is my understanding.
No, mine too. I think that is actually brilliant, because what I heard is that not only he had an extreme difficulty getting the accent right, the Southern drawl of Kong, but he did get it, and he got it to everybody's satisfaction, and he sounded fantastic. And then he got in a fight and fell 15 feet off the set to break his leg. Which is, that is literally adding injury to insult.
Right. It's just horrible.
It's just awful.
It is horrible. I really am glad he didn't end up playing Kong, though. I mean, it would be interesting to see, but maybe it's just in retrospect. I think that Slim Pickens, casting somebody who is so perfectly just already the cowboy was so great. I mean, Kubrick actually said, I couldn't replace Sellers with any other actor. It had to be with a real person, and Slim ended up being that real person. I mean, he was that cowboy. When he came walking onto the set in England, all the Brits were like, oh, well, he already got his costume and everything, without realizing that, no, that's just how Slim Pickens dresses. He just looks that way, almost as if he just got off his horse out in their parking lot. I mean, Peter Sellers, I mean, we've talked about him before on Being There, which is just a brilliant, brilliant film. And he's done a lot of just great roles. Not always great films, but certainly great roles. There's such a great blend of these characters. I mean, Merkin Muffley was supposed to be funny initially, but everybody was laughing too much, and so they kind of toned it down and went serious, which I think was really smart. I think that the way Merkin Muffley is now is just perfect. And his conversation, which is almost all improv, when he has the one-sided conversation with Dmitri over in Russia, is just one of the funniest things. And I could just listen to that on repeat, because it's just like a perfect conversation. It's so good.
I can too, and it was the level of improvisation that he undertook for this film. At just about every scene, he would read the first line from the script, and then he would just go. And Kubrick just let him go, and it created a lot of this retro scripting, right, where they went back and they transcribed everything that he said to put it in the script for lore and for editing, and it ended up just being perfect. The symbolism of the names. I don't know. I mean, they all have some sort of a symbol, and maybe I read too far into some of them, but President Merkin Muffley is not even much of a symbol. It's just, Merkin, the pubic wig, the alliteration or the allusion to sex and sexuality sort of begins in the highest office, I guess.
Right.
And that's it. So the character is well, you're right. It was initially played as funny. He ended up being modeled after Adlai Stevenson, and you can really see it in his conversations around the giant table as just the complete stoic. When he's not funny, he comes off as a true politician, and it ends up being a really terrific part. Lionel Mandrake. I couldn't figure out that much. Mandrake from the Old English, man plus dragon was Drake. It was dragon in Old English. That's pretty much as far as I got.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know it's a plant or a root.
Yeah.
Other than that,
it's a nightshade.
I don't know.
I
I don't know too much else about it, but I didn't look into that too much. But it's I like this particular character, and something that really kind of stuck out for me this time on this watch was just watching Mandrake's face as he kind of has this realization that Ripper has gone mad. And you get to kind of watch him as he kind of puts two and two together as he's talking to him and realizes like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do here because this guy's clearly off his rocker. It's just so good, and it's just brilliant to see kind of how he plays that. It's so interesting to watch how he plays these three characters. They're so different. And I mean, Strangelove, of course, whose real name, and I don't know if this is the first time I've caught it or this is the first time that I've really paid attention, but as they reveal in the film, his real name is Merkwerdgliebe.
which I believe literally translates to Strangelove.
Does it?
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny. A kraut by any other name.
There are some really good ones. His responses as Mandrake to some of Ripper's comments are fantastic. Mandrake, have you ever seen a commie drink a glass of water? Well, no, sir. I can't say that I have.
I consider myself a real water man. It's like there's a string in my leg. It's just gone. Whatever he's saying, and I know that whole string bit, he had no intention of actually saying it, but ended up saying it, and he and Kubrick were trying so hard not to laugh, but it worked so well that they kept it in there, and it's so funny.
It is just perfect, and equally perfect, the Strangelove, who ironically is not in the film all that often.
No, he kind of pops up weirdly, like midway through when the president calls for him, and he just happens to be sitting there. Which in and of itself, I think is really funny. The fact that Strangelove just happens to be there, and the introduction is so abrupt.
Yes, it really is. And then some of the most dramatic shots of any single character in the film are of the 15 minutes of total screen time that Strangelove gets, if that.
Yeah, if that, right. But he like the brilliance of having this character who's like, he's in a wheelchair, and this is what we've talked about with Lang. I mean, there's so many elements of him that I feel like Kubrick pulled from the Doctor in Metropolis, and from these different characters that we had seen in some of the Lang films.
Oh, Spies! What's his name in Spies?
Right. And how he, just this glove that almost has a life of its own and tries to strangle him, and is always, doing the Heil Hitler salute. It just doesn't make any sense that these people have him here as their advisor. It's so funny. And it just, I don't know, there's something really strangely appealing about it. And his whole conversation about the end about having, 16 women for every man, and they all, of course, are going to have to be sexually appealing. And it's just like,
Mein Führer, I can walk.
Yeah, right. The most perfect way to end this film right before the nuclear annihilation.
The funniest thing, because we talked about this leading up to this film and all of the things that Kubrick clearly brought into Strangelove, borrowed from Fritz Lang. Is over the last many weeks we've been talking about Fritz Lang. This is the thing that I found funniest about that whole conversation, that whole line of inquiry, is that in fact that black glove, as it turns out, was Kubrick's. Because he apparently had a crazy fear of the bright set lights actually burning his skin. So he was the one who wore those gloves. He didn't actually write those gloves into as a part of the character, which is funny because it turns out he wasn't borrowing from Fritz Lang for his characters. He was borrowing them for himself.
That's so funny. Well, I will say, in his defense, set lights are really hot.
Yes, oh, that's
somebody
true.
who has burned himself on them.
Okay, how about George C. Scott, General Buck Turgidson?
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
More with the names.
There it is,
right?
Turgid the Bombast. He is the jingoist commander who is sitting around the war room table. He is strongly advocating for a first strike offense.
And I believe that they modeled him a little bit after General Curtis LeMay. You know, just this whole idea of this general who is so excited about what you can do with these bombs and just how good his team is and stuff, that it's almost like they don't completely pay attention to the realities of what it actually means in the end. And I just love that about him. He's so funny. And I think that my favorite stuff is his concern that the president is going to let the Russian ambassador into the war room. He'll see the big board.
Big board.
It's like he's a child on a playground.
He is.
And that's what I love about him. I mean, he even takes a call from his girlfriend while he's talking to the president, and he has this whole conversation about, "No, I love you, baby." You know, it's just it's so like inappropriate, and it seems so perfect for that kind of like that youthful person who just doesn't, it's all id.
Yeah, he never aged. And to watch him when he talks about how long the B-52s can fly when damaged, about how those big birds, they fly so far, I feel like I've had those conversations. I was that guy, and I was 7 years old, and I was talking about Optimus Prime.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's perfect. It is just perfect. Sterling Hayden comes out of retirement as Brigadier General Jack D. Ripper.
I think it's kind of retirement in quotes. Like so many of these actors who go into retirement.
Yeah.
I mean, he had been working pretty solidly all the way up through the 50s into 1960. And then, he came out of retirement to do this in 64. And then he worked all the way until 82. So I don't know if this just rejuvenated his passion.
Yeah, it's a second wind.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or if he really never intended on really retiring.
Yeah.
But I mean, he takes this insane character and just goes with it. And the cigar chewing, the way that he delivers his lines about his precious bodily fluids and denying the women that he sleeps with of his essence. There is nothing that he does as a joke. It is all so 100% serious, and that's why it works so well. It's, he does everything whole hog as if he really believes about this fluoridation and that the Russians are trying to poison their bodily fluids. And it works so well. I don't know. I like it. I know there was this whole concept back then about like fluoridation, and there were these groups that actually believed these things. I think it was really interesting that Kubrick and the writers chose to kind of pull that in as kind of the person who essentially causes all of this to happen.
We've already talked a little bit about Slim Pickens. He was fantastic, riding the weapon all the way into the doomsday landscape.
The word that I heard is that he pretty much never had a sense that this was a comedy, and that he was, doing it just completely seriously, because he thought that it was kind of more serious, and it just, I don't know. I find that really funny.
I find that even all the way to the last bit when he's riding the bomb.
Yeah,
go Slim. Fun seeing James Earl Jones.
His first film, yeah, it's pretty interesting to see him popping up here, and I like that he has kind of got this this kind of role that kind of questions whether they should do this.
He's the voice of reason.
Yeah, he's the one who's like, "Are you sure this isn't just a test?" Which is nice. I mean, it's a bit part. And obviously, in retrospect, it's great being able to see where Jones goes from here, because his part is relatively otherwise forgettable. But it is nice to see him popping up in there.
Keenan Wynn plays Colonel Bat Guano.
Again, with the names Bat Guano. I don't even know what to say about that name. It's so funny. It is just so stinking funny.
It's a funny bit part for him. He's been working since the early 40s, and yet this film it's not a huge part for him by 1964, but really funny, dense but loyal.
He's one of those guys that it's like, I know I've seen him in stuff. I mean, looking through his credits, even just TV shows I was watching in the 80s, like Manimal, which was a show I loved.
Yes.
Fall Guy, Hardcastle, and McCormick. He was also in The Return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Love Boat. He was in the movie The Last Unicorn, The Greatest American Hero, Fantasy Island, like all things that I was watching. So inevitably I saw him in some of these things. But looking back in his early career, he was in Piranha. How funny. Yeah. Looking back earlier in his career, it's like, what is it in his career that is kind of where I know him from? And I don't know. I'm trying to pinpoint it. Where do you know him from?
Well, he is he's that face, because he was in so many shows, particularly through the 80s that I was watching, right? You already mentioned The Love Boat, but like Saint Elsewhere and Taxi and Quincy, and you mentioned Manimal, but Hardcastle and McCormick, are you kidding me? I loved that show. He was that guy through this period where I was always in front of the TV that was the face. And so I absolutely recognized him immediately. I don't remember him from any particular like giant movie role.
No, I don't either.
But the Fall Guy,
right?
So yeah, it was. He was ever present. 278 credits. Most of them were television.
Yeah, and he pops up like in Once Upon a Time in the West, but again, it's kind of a bit part. I think it probably was mostly the stuff in the TV stuff in the 80s that I recognize him from.
He was in Black Moon Rising, written by John Carpenter, starring Tommy Lee Jones, Linda Hamilton, and Robert Vaughn. There you go, Linda Hamilton.
I love it.
All right. And let's see, we had Tracy Reed as Miss Scott, the only woman in the film.
Not only does she play the woman who is with Turgidson, she also is acted as the model for the Playboy centerfold that we see Kong looking at in the plane. She is that model, and she was actually Carol Reed's niece.
She has this funny bit. She's talking about how she got the job. She says, "Stanley said your body isn't too bad, so you have the job." Yeah,
he says it's a bikini role, so I'm going to have to see you in a bikini.
Right. Peter Bull plays the Russian ambassador Alexei D. Sadetsky.
His stuff in this film I just love so much. He actually was in The African Queen. He's the captain of the other boat.
Oh, wow.
And talking about the Great Escape, which we just talked about, he is in Tom Jones. Yep, the movie that won Best Picture that year that we were talking about.
So terrible.
Yeah.
That's really funny. He also has quite a few credits. He's worked up through 1983.
Well, I love that he ended up in Yellowbeard as Queen Anne.
He was terrific, and that really wraps up the major cast members that were terrifically exciting in this film and funny. What about getting it made? Let's talk about Failsafe.
Yeah, so Sidney Lumet was making a little movie called Failsafe right around the same time, and Failsafe, it's another kind of movie about the nuclear possibilities of a nuclear war. And it is American planes are sent to deliver a nuclear attack on Moscow, but it's a mistake due to an electrical malfunction. Can an all-out war be averted? Lumet was directing this film, and it was just one of those things where it's just like, I mean, it's based on a book. Kubrick felt, this is way too similar to my film. He sued him. He sued the production, because he felt that that they were doing it purposefully, because trying to kind of ride the coattails. And also just to kind of slow it down. And he succeeded. He ended up pushing the release date for Fail-Safe back, I think, almost a full year after his film was released, or maybe not a full year, but like at least toward much later in the year, so that it didn't affect his release date. Because I think they were both initially pushing to release the end of '63. And his ended up releasing early '64, and theirs released, I think, toward the end of '64. And it didn't do that well. It didn't end up being the big hit that everybody was hoping. And I don't know how much the lawsuit had to do with that. I think Kubrick probably says it's all because of him.
Yeah. Would that have been the film we're talking about? I doubt it, because it wasn't very funny.
No. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. It's listed as a drama thriller.
Yeah.
Totally different.
The impact of Kennedy's assassination were pretty powerful on this film. I believe that it happened right when the film was due to premiere.
It was scheduled to premiere November 22nd.
Yeah.
63. And yeah, they had to kind of push the whole thing back because of the assassination. And, it's the end of the year, it's the awards and all that. They were like, well, when should we release it? It ended up not getting released in 63. It was pushed to January 64, much to the chagrin of the people involved. But, it was one of those things. It's like, this is a film about a president who has to make a decision about, if he's going to start a nuclear war or not. And Kennedy just was killed, and he went through this whole thing with Cuba. And, is it appropriate to release this so close to his death? So they really had to kind of, deliberate on that. And they had to change a line in the film. There's a line when Kong, he's going through the provisions for his crew as far as what they got in their little war packs. And he's kind of reading and he's like, heck, a fella could have a pretty good time in Vegas with this stuff. Originally it was Dallas, and they had to have Slim come back in and actually dub that line. Yeah,
you can see it. Once you know it's Dallas, you can see it pretty clearly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. The cinematography is Gilbert Taylor.
I like the look of the film. I love the look of the war room. I think the darkness in there looks great, and also I think that the film has kind of a newsreel feel overall, which I think works really nicely. Weirdly, and Kubrick has never been a fan of like real widescreen stuff. Weirdly, the new the latest Blu-ray is released just 16:9, but Kubrick released it. I think it's actually one of those weird films where the aspect ratio actually changes during the course of the film. I remember back in my Laserdisc days, the aspect ratio would go from 1.33 to 1 to 1.85 to 1. Over the course of the film, depending on what was happening. And I can't remember which scenes, but I know Criterion is actually releasing a new Blu-ray version of it soon, and I'm assuming they are going to actually release it in the proper aspect ratio as opposed to just the 16:9 chopping stuff off.
I also watched the just 16:9 straight up. Where did it change? Do you know?
I think it's the War Room. I want to say all the 1.33 to 1 is all the War Room stuff. I think. And I don't know why Kubrick chose to do that. I don't know if it was, something having to do with the film stock was cheaper or what. But, Kubrick was never a fan of anything really wide. He always liked his stuff, relatively narrow.
Generally, it is just lovely. The particular, some of the stories about getting the thing shot, the second unit shot all the plates for the rear projection of the B-52 over the Arctic Circle, and apparently didn't know that there's a base up there, and so that the U.S. would launch their fighter jets to actually escort them to the icy surface because they thought they were spies.
Right.
Given the movie they were making, I find that ironic.
So funny.
So just little things, but they end up being gorgeous plates, and actually the projection sort of composite actually looks really good.
I like it. I think it's a lot of fun. Even when the bomb, the whole bomb drop, and as he kind of plummets to the ground, the way that kind of he zooms in on that ground behind him, I think it always looks kind of just like he's going to hit a map on the wall. But at the same time, I think it still is pretty effective.
I do too. They ended up doing that was just a crane shot. They're just backing away from him and then optically reducing him in the frame. And it's still it's a funny thing because it's kind of a cheap solution to a complex problem just in terms of physics. It was a giant bomb, right? It was like 50 feet long. And so to make it move was challenging. But it ends up creating this composite of the crane coming back and the the projection behind him ends up creating some of the most iconic promotional material in film history, right? Him riding that bomb is legendary.
And that shot almost didn't happen because Kubrick was like, well, we have to, we want to see the bomb drop. And they had not designed the set to do that. They had 2 days to figure out a solution. And so that was the solution they came up with. And I think it ended up working. And it's funny how that's the sort of, it's like, the shark in Jaws, how it was broken so that you don't see it very often, but it ended up making the film better.
Yeah, right.
Same thing here, because they had to kind of do it the way that they did it. They ended up creating something that ended up being kind of the iconic moment for the film.
Let's talk about production design. Ken Adams and Peter Merton, art direction.
Ken Adams, anybody who knows his work must be familiar with the James Bond franchise because he has kind of a knack for really big sets, and whether it's the evil lair in the volcano or the war room, I mean, he really knows what he's doing in creating these massive sets that are just so fascinating to look at. I love the war room set here. It's just so much so fun. It's such an interesting idea. It took 150 tradesmen to build it. It was 130 feet wide by 100 feet long by 35 feet high. The big board took 10 miles of electric cable to light it. It's insane. And it's just iconic. I mean, he created a totally iconic room for this film.
The table itself was 22 feet in diameter, and he had it covered in green felt because apparently Kubrick wanted the actors to feel like they were at a giant poker game, political poker game, which, apparently Adams and Merton said, you're not going to be able to see. There's nothing else. There's no other symbols that are going to make it look like it's a poker game. It's just going to be, so that's okay. I just want it to feel that way.
Right, it's black and white. You're not going to be able to tell it's green,
unless you have poker, unless you have playing cards on a green felt table, you don't think of it as a green felt table. But he wanted it to be that way, so it was a giant 20-foot, 2-foot diameter table covered in felt to make that war room. The B-52 set is one that I find really interesting. That was made, they had no help from the U.S. military. And so Adams and Merton, they had a book cover, the cover of a book which had a photo of a B-52 pilot sitting in the cockpit. And so they had about a half side of the cockpit. The rest is entirely manufactured of that B-52. And word is they brought the Air Force, members of the Air Force in to see an early screening of the film. And that caused quite a commotion because apparently the rest of the B-52 was almost perfect. That they thought they had to be getting information from inside the military.
That's what I heard. I thought it was so interesting that they made it so perfect. I mean, it almost sounded like Kubrick and Adams were going to be arrested because the military was acting like they were giving out trade secrets from it, which is, I guess it speaks highly of Adams' design abilities.
Hair and makeup, Stuart Freeborn makeup, Barbara Ritchie hair. The only hair that really stands out to me is Strangelove himself. He looks like Eraserhead.
Well, I wrote those down because specifically when an actor is playing multiple roles, there are always those little bits and pieces that they have to kind of help them differentiate. And the actor has to inhabit them well, but it also takes a good hair makeup department to really do that. And I thought Freeborn and Ritchie did a great job with the kind of the balding cap for Sellers when he's Mufflin, of the little bit of extra nose and the teeth when he's playing Mandrake, and then of course the kind of the bigger hair when he's playing Strangelove. I thought they did a great job, and I think that between them paired with Sellers, that trio was able to really work well to kind of create three completely unique characters.
Speaking of crazy effects, did you write this down just because of you wanted to say Beavers and Ouija?
I think that's really funny. I hadn't planned on saying Beavers and Ouija, but why wouldn't you now that it's been said?
That'd be Wally Beavers and Arthur Ouija Feelig behind the effects.
That's Ouija, the photographer.
Yes.
That I thought was interesting that they actually brought him onto this as an advisor for the effects, kind of an uncredited advisor. Sellers actually used Ouija's speaking pattern and his accent as a little bit of the influence for Dr. Strangelove's character. Because if you hear Ouija speak, it really kind of sounds like Strangelove.
And this was another one that we didn't talk about the what Strangelove was really based on, and I think I was one going into this film thinking, oh, Strangelove was based on Kissinger. I for years I've thought that. I don't know. Apparently that's a common thing, and I fell for it. But it was actually Werner von Braun, Hermann Kahn, and John von Neumann, who are all military scientists for the German military scientists behind World War II, and then Ouija's voice,
right?
Kind of an amalgam character. Title design. You already mentioned Pablo Ferro and the fantastic titles.
Yeah, I think it was smart. He and Kubrick were talking about the way to design the titles. They loved this whole idea of these planes basically having sex in the air. But he was struggling trying to figure out where to place the titles because it kept distracting your eye from the act of love happening in midair and then having to look over to read titles. And so he came up with this whole idea of doing these really pencil thin lettering of the big and small words right over the image. And I think that was really a fascinating way to go. And it is kind of iconic. But yeah, Farrow is just one of those guys. I mean, geez, he worked on Thomas Crown Affair with kind of the split screen beginning. He's worked on everything from Beetlejuice to Live and Die in L.A., Stop Making Sense, The Addams Family, Men in Black. I mean, he's still around. He's still busy doing stuff. He did a lot of stuff with Hal Ashby. In fact, even being there, he kind of helped in that film. So a really interesting guy who's just, he has a great eye for this sort of thing.
Did you find the typo?
I know I've seen it before it was pointed out to me in the little making of, but I know I had remembered seeing it there.
I had never seen it. I never noticed it, and now I feel like a dummy. It's not based on the book. It would, of course, be based on the book.
Right.
And he forgot a D.
Yep.
Funny. I can't believe it, but you actually have an IMFDB for this one.
Right.
I did not see this coming.
Well,
this is, of course, the Internet Movie Firearms Database.
You gotta love the big guns. That feels so inappropriate talking about it now, but
that's awful. Yeah.
There's the big Browning that Ripper is using that he hides in his golf bag, apparently, that he pulls out to use and just kind of hold as he's mowing down all these invaders. It's just so silly. I mean, that was really the only reason I put it on there, because I thought that was funny to point that one out.
I think it's funny enough to add to the notes.
The music is interesting in this film. Laurie Johnson does the music, and I'd have to really kind of listen through again to pinpoint anything that isn't part of When Johnny Comes Marching Home, because that seems to be the vast majority of the music that she did, is just taking that tune and kind of rejiggering it over and over, and more intensely for the every time we cut to the B-52 as they're on their run to drop their bomb.
I think so. There was, there were the other pop songs of the time,
right?
We'll Meet Again, and but in terms of the score and some of the symphonic sexy time music,
which I think is Try a Little Tenderness, is what I heard.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I get it now.
How PR companies try to come up with creative ways to get tickets sold. Well, for this one, they came up with the idea to give out theater pocket radioactivity calculators. Those are the ones that Dr. Strangelove pulls out to determine how long the fallout is going to be, to determine when they'll be able to come back up. They gave those to theaters to give out as promos and at contests and all that sort of thing. And I think that's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Here, have a pocket radioactivity calculator.
Bosley Crowther.
He was the film critic for the New York Times, I believe. He was a one of those people who this film came out and he just ripped it. He totally didn't get it. He thought that this film was just a terrible thing to release and disrespectful and all that sort of stuff. And then he saw it again. Like I don't know. I think it was one of those movies that kind of people. Like I said at the beginning, they didn't necessarily get it right away. It took a little time. He ended up doing a re-review of it, and he ended up liking it. He ended up kind of praising it for what Kubrick was doing here. And I think that's pretty interesting for a film critic to actually kind of make a complete turn like that.
I have to read his opening paragraph of his initial review. May I?
Do it.
Stanley Kubrick's new film, called Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, is beyond any question the most shattering, sick joke I've ever come across. And I say that with full recollection of some of the grim ones I've heard from Mort Saul, some of the cartoons I've seen by Charles Addams, and some of the stuff I've read in Mad Magazine.
Yep.
Those were simpler times. Am I right?
Those were, yes.
This
indeed.
is such a disgusting movie because it pales in comparison to Mad Magazine. Oh dear. How did it do for awards? This is a great film. It should have won all the awards, right?
It should have. Boy, I wish it did. This was one of those films that I'm wondering if, this was a January release, which typically is kind of the dumping ground, but because of the assassination of Kennedy at the end of 1963, I'm wondering if it kind of, gave people a little more leeway as far as knowing why things got pushed to 1964. But this film did get nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Lead Actor, Peter Sellers. Unfortunately, it didn't win anything. The winners that year were My Fair Lady, which is not one of my favorite films, won Best Picture, Best Director for George Cukor, and Best Actor for Rex Harrison. And Beckett by Edward Anhalt won Best Adapted Screenplay. So yeah, it lost all of its awards, but it did receive a number of other awards. It won another 15 awards, or 15 wins, and had 4 more nominations. So, it's one of those films that I think some people got it, some people didn't. Like the BAFTAs, they were all over it.
Well, the British, they get Sellers.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Any sense of a remake, reboot? When are we going to get to see this again?
Kubrick 2 or Strangelove 2?
Strangelove 2, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's interesting that in 1995, Kubrick actually brought in Terry Southern to script a sequel titled Son of Strangelove. And he apparently had Terry Gilliam in mind to direct. They never finished the script. They started laying out the index cards of the basic story structure, but then Terry Southern died later that year. And but yeah, I guess the idea was largely going to be set in underground bunkers where Dr. Strangelove had taken refuge with a group of women. I'd be very
that
curious.
Sounds like a terrible movie.
It does. It really probably should never have been made. I'm surprised that Kubrick even came up with it. But yeah,
awful.
Gilliam actually said, he had been told about all this after Kubrick died, and he's just like, I never knew about it until after he died, but I would have loved to. So. I guess with Kubrick's blessing, I would be happy to go direct it too, even if it was going to be bad, just to say, hey, Kubrick told me to.
Kubrick told me to. Yeah. That's one of the things my kids say when they get in trouble. Dad, Kubrick told me to. OPE.
I love that the Coen brothers kind of throw that in every so now and then again. Not too often. I definitely remember it in Raising Arizona, but it's just one of those weird little references that they have. And it's to this film.
How did it do on the numbers? If it didn't win the awards, at least tell me it made back its money.
Yeah, it was released, like I said, January 29th, 1964. It cost about $1.8 million to make. So, it was a modest budget. That was adjusted about $13.5 million. It ended up making domestically about $9.5 million. I couldn't find any international figures, but yeah, so that would be about an adjusted total gross of about $70.8 million. So, it made its money back. This film ended up making about $610,000 per finished minute adjusted.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad. It's number 90 on our list.
Listed they paid for the table.
Right.
I think it's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com and / the next reel, and then search for Dr. Strangelove. You'll see it in our most recent rankings there if you're keeping up with the show, and add it to your own list. And let's see, let's compare numbers. Let's compare digits. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying the Bomb and Love the Bomb, versus...
First up, the Oh Brother block. Oh Brother, where art thou? I'm going to tell you, Pete.
This is a tough one for me.
It's not tough in any way, shape, or form for me. I watched this film, and I'm really conflicted right now because I'm starting to feel like, do I have a new favorite movie? I don't know. It's possible. It's possible. I haven't committed that to myself yet, but it is possible.
Let's just see how it plays out.
It's Dr. Strangelove.
It's Strangelove. It's Strangelove.
All right, Dr. Strangelove or The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Oh, Strangelove.
Absolutely. Strangelove or Fisher King.
Strangelove for me.
Brilliant, Terry Gilliam, but yeah, Strangelove. Strangelove. Oh, see, Strangelove or Brazil.
Wow.
Right now, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say Strangelove.
Yeah, I'm Strangelove.
I'm really shocked at myself.
I feel like I'm watching a chrysalis.
Rebirth.
Come out, emerge from the chrysalis.
Strangelove or Touch of Evil.
Oh, dear, we're getting right up in there, aren't we?
I'm Strangelove.
Oh, jeez. All right, I got on this train, Andy. I'm going to ride it to the end.
There you are. Yes, you are. Dr. Strangelove or Seven.
7. I can't do it. I can't.
I'm doing Strangelove.
Here we go.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Paper. Tense.
It is tense.
1, 2, 3. Paper. 1, 2, 3. Rock. 1, 2, 3. Paper. You are kidding me now. 1, 2, 3. Rock.
Paper.
Did you just cheat? Did you say it?
I said it at the exact same time. There's no cheating here.
All right. Well,
thank you.
That's got to be it, right?
No. Strangelove or Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I'm Strangelove, baby.
Seriously?
I am Strangelove. Like I said, this might be my new favorite movie. I'll just flat out tell you right now. This is number 1 on my next reel Flickchart right now.
It is?
It is.
Oh, mind blown.
I know.
Okay, we got to do it. I gotta
over Mr. Fight. Smith. Okay.
Yes. 1.
But he's a doctor. He's gone to more school than Mr. Smith. 1, 2, 3.
Paper.
Scissors. Oh, you won.
Suck it.
Oh, that's a terrible thing to say. This was really, really delicate.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. That was insensitive. Andy, would you please suck it?
There you go. Much better. That's it. We are at number 4. If it were up to me, this would be number 1.
It is not up to you.
This is up. This is above network now for me. This is like the top of the chart.
Wow, Andy.
I watched this like 3 times before we did this show. I couldn't stop rewatching it.
I feel like you put up a good fight. It was a principled loss in your case, and I appreciate it. I also love this film. Number 4 ain't that bad. We have a film that broke the top 5, Andy, and that's hard to come by.
It is. It really is.
All right. Celebrate the little things.
I will.
And not your personal stunning loss.
I'll cry myself to sleep, but I'll be okay tomorrow.
I'm going to go ahead and assume that this is a 5-star film on Letterboxd.
This is a 6-star film.
I was just going to say, have you written a strongly worded letter about the number of stars?
That's right. No,
it is
yes.
also a 5-star film for me.
Perfect. Yeah.
Now, where do we go from here? Do you have any idea what we're doing here from our vacation?
Well, believe it or not, vacation must come to an end.
Oh, curse you.
I know. I am sorry. We're going to be entering a fun little series. It should be interesting. It's definitely going to be covering a wide variety of films. This is going to be a disease films series. We have eight films. So we're going to be talking about 2 full months of disease.
This is good.
It's going to be a wide variety. We're starting off with the Omega Man, which should be an interesting one to kick it off with. A little dose of Charlton Heston 70s craziness.
Yeah.
Then we've got the Andromeda Strain, The Crazies, Outbreak, Serenity, Children of Men, Blindness, ending with Contagion.
I cannot tell you the number of people who have asked me why we don't have Serenity on our list. So I'm telling you people, August 5th, Serenity joins the list. I'm excited about that.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, very excited about that. This is awesome. It is a great series. I think I love disease stories second only to my love of zombie stories. Really, I mean, I recognize they're very similar.
Yeah, they're one and the same,
similar.
really.
but when you look at movies like, Outbreak is definitely, I mean, people don't get great. They just melt from the inside out, right? I mean, it's just a different kind of a vibe.
Yes.
But in this case, they're right up there. I forgive an awful lot on these stories. I really do. That's a shame. It makes me a weak person.
Well, it's going to be a fun series to talk about. So
It sure
I'm
is.
definitely looking forward to it. So yeah, that's the next thing that we'll be kicking off right as soon as vacation is over.
Looking forward to it. Between now and then, I don't even need to tell you because I've spent the last 2 weeks in bed.
Well, I've been to one World Fair, a picnic, and a rodeo, and that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard to come over a set of earphones.
Amazon giveth, Andrew.
As Amazon always doeth.
I have a 1-star from Susan, who watched this movie just a few months ago, February 2016. I don't know. Maybe we've spent the last 2 hours laughing too hard, but sadly, that's how this hits me. She says, "Too real. Not for the timid or those worried about the lives of their descendants."
Wow.
I know,
now,
heavy,
that's
right?
a review straight out of like 1964. I had no idea this was a comedy, and I'm terrified.
Right?
I'm going to go hide under my desk and duck and cover.
The Hammer and Sickle Falls.
Oh, my God. Oh, that is brilliant. Just
Grim.
brilliant. Okay, well, I also have a 1-star. Worst movie of the 1960s, says Dan C.
There have been some sadly bad movies out of the 1960s. I'm not sure that's good to say.
No, I mean, Tom Jones, maybe. I feel so.
Right?
I shouldn't say that. It's been so long since I've seen Tom Jones.
It's terrible.
I need to rent it again just to relive its.
You don't
badness.
judge blindly.
Well, I already did. So, Dan says, I didn't see it when it came out, but was aware of the hoopla. Seeing it 50 years later, it is one of the worst movies ever made. Peter Sellers didn't fit in at all in any of his roles. The special effect, man riding the bomb, was ludicrous, as though filmed by a 3-year-old, and the storyline was as scientifically bogus as any movie could be. Yes, I know it was supposed to be a comedy, but it turned out to be an absurd, unfunny fantasy. I wonder if the tiresome George C. Scott was ever embarrassed by his ridiculous role. I think he was. He was tricked by Kubrick into playing the role over the top. I like how he tries to kind of justify his dumb review here by throwing in some facts.
Yes, right. Well, that was good. And right after he insulted the cinematographer, accusing him of being a 3-year-old.
Yes.
That's a shame. Thanks, Amazon.
It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our two-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye, Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our Naughty Children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with the Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.